The worn denim jacket was all that stood between Ethan Armstrong and the biting February wind, but when he saw the woman at the bus stop trembling violently in her soaked blazer, he didn't hesitate to slip it off his shoulders. "Here," he said, extending the jacket toward her. "You look like you need this more than I do." The woman looked up, startled. Even with mascara running down her cheeks and her dark hair plastered to her face from the unexpected downpour, she was striking. Her gray eyes widened as she took in his offer, then immediately shook her head. "No, I couldn't possibly. You'll freeze." Ethan shrugged, already feeling the cold seep through his flannel shirt. "I'll be fine. My bus should be here in a few minutes anyway." She hesitated, another violent shiver running through her frame. Finally, she accepted the jacket, pulling it around her shoulders with obvious relief. "Thank you. I'll return it, I promise. Do you have a card or something?" He almost laughed at that. A card, as if struggling mechanics who could barely make rent had business cards. "Don't worry about it. Just stay warm." "No, really, I insist." She fumbled in her dripping purse, pulling out what looked like an expensive phone in a designer case. "Give me your number at least." Something about her earnestness made him comply. He rattled off his digits, watching as she typed them into her contacts with shaking fingers. The bus rumbled up to the curb, and Ethan grabbed his worn backpack. "That's me," he said. "Take care of yourself." As the bus pulled away, he caught one last glimpse of her standing there, wrapped in his jacket, staring after the bus with an expression he couldn't quite read. The apartment was dark when Ethan got home, but that wasn't unusual. His daughter Maya spent most afternoons at the neighbor's place until he got off work. Mrs. Chen was a godsend, really, watching the 7-year-old for practically nothing because, as she said, Maya was such a sweet girl and kept her company anyway. He knocked on Mrs. Chen's door and Maya came bounding out, her dark pigtails bouncing. "Daddy!" She launched herself at his legs, and he scooped her up despite his tired muscles protesting. A full day of lying under cars at Rick's auto shop always left him sore, but he'd never let Maya know that. "Hey, princess." "How was school?" "Good. We learned about fractions, and I got a gold star on my spelling test." She wriggled down and ran to grab her backpack, chattering the whole way. "Mrs. Chen made me a snack, and we watched some cartoons, but just educational ones like you said. You're a gem, Mrs. Chen," Ethan said to the elderly woman standing in her doorway. "Oh, pish-posh, this one's never any trouble. Same time tomorrow, if you don't mind." After dinner, which was boxed macaroni and cheese stretched with some frozen vegetables, Ethan helped Maya with her homework at their small kitchen table. The apartment was tiny, just one bedroom that Maya occupied while he took the couch, but it was clean and safe and theirs. That was more than he did growing up. "Dad, where's your jacket?" Maya asked suddenly, looking up from her math worksheet. "I gave it to someone who needed it. But you loved that jacket." Her face crumpled with concern that seemed too old for a 7-year-old. "And it's so cold out." He ruffled her hair. "I've got my work jacket. Don't worry about your old man." That night, after Maya was tucked in bed with her favorite stuffed elephant, Ethan lay on the couch staring at the water-stained ceiling. His phone buzzed on the coffee table, an unknown number lighting up the screen. "Hello. Hi, is this Ethan, the man from the bus stop?" The voice was professional, measured, but he recognized it. "Yeah, that's me. You okay? Did you warm up all right?" "Yes, thanks to you." There was a pause. "I'm Vivian Turner. I wanted to arrange to return your jacket. And honestly, to thank you properly. Would you be free for coffee sometime?" Coffee. He tried to remember the last time he'd gone out for coffee that wasn't from a gas station. "You don't have to do that. Really. Please, I'd like to." Something in her voice made him agree, though he couldn't say what. They arranged to meet at a cafe downtown on Saturday morning. After hanging up, Ethan stared at his phone for a long moment, wondering what he'd just gotten himself into. Saturday arrived with the kind of bright, cold sunshine that made everything look clean and new. Maya was excited about spending the day with her friend Sophie from school, and Sophie's mom had been thrilled to have her over for a playdate. That left Ethan free to meet Vivian, though he felt oddly nervous about it. The cafe was nicer than his usual haunts, all exposed brick and hanging plants. He spotted Vivian immediately, sitting by the window, and nearly didn't recognize her. Without the rain-soaked desperation, she was even more beautiful. Her dark hair fell in waves over a cream-colored sweater, and when she saw him, her face lit up with genuine warmth. "Ethan," she said, standing. His jacket was draped over the back of her chair, freshly cleaned. "Thank you for coming." "No problem." He felt suddenly aware of his worn jeans and the fact that his nicest shirt was still just a button-down he'd had for 5 years. "Please sit. What would you like? It's my treat." He ordered just a regular coffee, though she insisted he try one of their pastries. As they sat down, an awkward silence stretched between them for a moment. "So," Vivian began, wrapping her hands around her cup, "I wanted to properly thank you. What you did the other night, it might not seem like much, but I'd had the worst day of my life, and that one act of kindness from a stranger, it meant more than you could know." "Rough day at work?" he asked. She laughed, but it was tinged with bitterness. "You could say that." "Sometimes I wonder why I do what I do." "What do you do?" "I work in corporate management," she said, which Ethan would later learn was the understatement of the century. "What about you?" "I'm a mechanic. Cars, mostly. Some motorcycles when they come through." Her eyes brightened. "That must be satisfying work. Fixing things, making them run properly again." He hadn't expected that response. Most people seem to look down on manual labor, or at least pity it. "Yeah, it is, actually. Every day is a puzzle. I like puzzles." They talked for over an hour, the conversation flowing easier than Ethan expected. Vivian asked about his life with genuine interest, and he found himself mentioning Maya, watching carefully for the usual reaction when single dads mentioned kids. But Vivian's expression only softened. "A daughter." "That must be wonderful. She's the best thing in my life," he said simply. "Her mom's not in the picture, hasn't been since Maya was a baby, but we do all right, just the two of us." "I'm sure you're a great father." Vivian said it with such certainty that Ethan felt something warm unfold in his chest. When he glanced at his watch and realized he needed to pick up Maya, he was surprised to find himself disappointed. Vivian walked him out, and at the door, she hesitated. "Would you like to do this again sometime? Maybe dinner?" "I'd like that," he heard himself say, "but I should be upfront. I don't have a lot of free time and I can't really afford fancy places." "How about this?" Vivian said, her gray eyes steady on his. "Next Saturday, if you're free, I'll cook. My place. You can bring Maya if you'd like. I'd love to meet her." Something about the offer felt too intimate, too fast, but there was no guile in Vivian's expression, just honest interest. "Let me think about it," he said carefully. "It's not that I don't trust you, but I have to be careful about who I introduce into her life." "Of course. I understand completely." She handed him a business card this time, and he glanced at it. Turner Industries, it read, Vivian Turner, Chief Executive Officer, CEO. He looked back up at her, processing this information. She had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. "I might have downplayed my job a bit, but I promise I'm just a person who's terrible at remembering to check the weather and got caught in the rain." He laughed despite himself. "A CEO? Wow. And here I am in my $10 shirt." "It's a nice shirt," she said, and her sincerity was so genuine that he believed her. Maya was full of questions when Ethan picked her up, her face flushed from playing in Sophie's backyard. "Did you have fun, Dad? Where did you go? Was it for work?" "I just met a friend for coffee," he said, buckling her into the back seat of his aging Honda Civic. "What friend? Do I know them?" "A new friend. Someone I helped the other day." He glanced at her in the rearview mirror. "She invited us for dinner next week. Would you want to go?" Maya's eyes went wide. "Is she your girlfriend?" "No, princess, just a friend." "But she could be your girlfriend," Maya said with 7-year-old logic. "You're allowed to have a girlfriend, you know. Sophie's dad has a girlfriend, and Sophie says she's really nice." Ethan's hands tightened on the steering wheel. They'd had versions of this conversation before. Maya worried about him being alone, which was ridiculous because she was all he needed. But he also knew she'd picked up on his loneliness, perceptive as she was. "We'll see, Maya. But don't get any ideas, okay? We barely know each other." That week crawled by with unusual slowness. Work was steady. Maya had her normal routine of school and homework and play, but Ethan found his thoughts drifting to Vivian at odd moments. When he finally texted her on Thursday to accept the dinner invitation, her response came back almost immediately with an address, and a note that said she was looking forward to it. The address, when he looked it up, made his stomach drop. It was in one of the most expensive buildings downtown, the kind of place with a doorman and probably marble lobbies. Saturday evening, he dressed Maya in her best dress, the blue one they'd bought for school pictures, and put on his nicest jeans and a clean button-down. Maya was practically vibrating with excitement. "Is she pretty?" Maya asked as they rode the elevator up to the 20th floor. "Yeah, she is. But remember your manners, okay? I always have good manners, Daddy." The elevator doors opened directly into a penthouse apartment, and Ethan tried not to stare. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city, and the space was decorated in soft neutrals, with modern furniture that probably cost more than his car. Vivian appeared from what looked like the kitchen, wearing jeans and a simple sweater, her hair pulled back in a ponytail. Somehow, seeing her dressed casually in this formal space made Ethan relax a fraction. "You must be Maya," Vivian said, crouching down to Maya's level. "I'm Vivian." "Your dad told me you got a gold star on your spelling test," Maya beamed. "I did. I studied really hard. I can tell, smart and hardworking, I like that." Vivian straightened and met Ethan's eyes. "Come in, please. I hope you like pasta. I'm not an amazing cook, but I make a decent carbonara." Dinner was easier than Ethan expected. Vivian set up Maya at the dining table with coloring books and crayons while the adults cooked together in the enormous kitchen. She asked his opinion on things, worked beside him comfortably, and didn't seem to mind when he took over the pasta because the timing was tricky. "You're good at this," she observed, watching him work. "Had to learn, can't feed a kid takeout every night." He tested the pasta, found it perfectly al dente and drained it. "My mom taught me before she passed, said every man should know how to cook." She sounds wise. She was. Over dinner, Maya entertained them with stories from school, and Vivian listened with genuine attention, asking questions and laughing at the right moments. Ethan watched the two of them interact and felt something shift in his chest. He dated a bit over the years, but no one had ever taken to Maya like this, or vice versa. After dinner, while Maya was absorbed in a nature documentary that Vivian put on, the two adults cleaned up together. "She's wonderful," Vivian said quietly, loading the dishwasher. "You've done an amazing job with her." "Thanks. She makes it easy." He handed her a plate. "Can I ask you something? Anything?" "Why did you invite us here? You're a CEO. You probably have a million better things to do on a Saturday night." Vivian was quiet for a moment, her hands still in the soapy water. "Honestly, when you gave me that jacket, I was standing at that bus stop seriously considering whether my life was worth living anymore." Ethan froze. "Not suicide," she added quickly, seeing his expression. "But I just had the most brutal board meeting. People I'd trusted for years had tried to oust me from my own company. I'd walked out into that rain feeling completely alone and worthless. And then you, this stranger, gave me the literal coat off your back expecting nothing in return. It reminded me that there was still kindness in the world, still good people." She looked at him, her gray eyes shining. "I wanted to know the man who did that, and now that I'm getting to know you, I find I want to keep knowing you." The dishwasher hummed between them as Ethan processed this. "That's a lot of pressure to put on a guy. Is it too much?" She looked suddenly uncertain. "I know we just met, and you have Maya to think about, and I probably seem crazy inviting you here, telling you all this." "No," he interrupted. "It's not too much. I just want to be clear about something. I don't have much to offer. I work long hours at a job that pays enough to keep us fed and housed, but not much else. I drive a car that's held together mostly by hope and duct tape. I can't take you to fancy restaurants or buy you expensive gifts. And Maya, she comes first always, if that's not what you're looking for. Vivian stepped closer, close enough that he could smell her perfume, something light and floral. Ethan, I spend every day surrounded by people who want something from me. Money, status, connections. You're the first person in longer than I can remember who's looked at me and seen just a person. That's worth more than any fancy restaurant. Miss Vivian! Maya's voice made them step apart. She was standing in the kitchen doorway, clutching her stuffed elephant. The documentary is over. Can I see your room? I bet it's really cool. Vivian laughed. Want to see something even cooler? I have a telescope on the balcony. Maya's eyes went wide, and soon they were bundled in coats on the balcony while Vivian showed Maya how to focus the telescope on various stars and planets. Ethan stood back, watching his daughter's excited face and Vivian's patient explanations, and felt his careful walls beginning to crumble. Over the next few weeks, Ethan and Vivian fell into an easy rhythm. She'd come by the auto shop on her lunch break sometimes, perching on a stool in the garage while he worked, still in her power suits and heels, asking questions about engines and timing belts. His coworkers ribbed him mercilessly about his fancy girlfriend, but he noticed they cleaned up their language when she was around, treating her with genuine respect. Other times, he'd meet her at her office building after dropping Meyer at Mrs. Chen's, and they'd walk through the city together, talking about everything and nothing. She told him about the pressures of running Turner Industries, the constant battles with board members who thought she was too young or too soft or too female. He told her about growing up poor, about Maya's mother leaving when she was just 6 months old, about the fear that he'd never be enough for his daughter. You're more than enough, Vivian said firmly one evening as they sat on a bench in the park. Meyer adores you. Anyone can see that. I want to give her more, though. Better schools, opportunities, experiences. The best thing you can give her is what you already do. Your time, your love, your presence. That's worth more than any private school. He looked at her, this woman who could probably buy a private school if she wanted, saying these things with complete sincerity. You really believe that? I know it. My parents had all the money in the world, but they were never around. They died in a plane crash when I was 22, and you know what I regret most? That I never really knew them. They were always working, always traveling. I inherited a fortune and a company, but I'd trade it all for one more real conversation with them. Ethan took her hand, lacing their fingers together. It was the most intimate gesture they'd shared beyond a brief kiss goodbye the week before. I'm sorry. Don't be. It made me who I am, but it's why I'm so drawn to what you have with Maya, that relationship, that bond. It's real in a way most things in my life aren't. The first real complication came in late March. Ethan's car finally gave up the ghost, the transmission going out in spectacular fashion on his way home from work. The repair quote was more than the car was worth, and buying even a cheap used car would wipe out the small emergency fund he'd managed to save. He was staring at the numbers in his kitchen, Meyer asleep in her room when Vivian called. Hey, he answered, trying to keep the stress from his voice. Hey yourself, you sound tired, long day. You could say that. Car died, trying to figure out logistics. There was a pause. How much do you need? Vivian, no. Ethan, I have more money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes. Let me help. I can't take money from you. We've been seeing each other for what, a month? That's not. I can't be that guy. What guy? Her voice was sharp now. The guy who accepts help when he needs it. The guy who lets someone who cares about him actually do something to make his life easier. The guy who's with you for your money, he said bluntly. The silence stretched so long he thought she'd hung up. Finally, she spoke, her voice small. Is that really what you think people would say? I know it's what people would say. And I know it's not true, but Vivian, I have to be able to look at myself in the mirror. I have to show Maya that you work for what you have, that you don't take handouts. It's not a handout. It's someone who cares about you helping out. I know, but I still can't. They hung up on awkward terms, and Ethan spent a sleepless night on the couch, second-guessing everything. By morning, he'd worked out a plan. He could take the bus to work for a while, save aggressively, and buy something cheap in a few months. It would be hard, but they'd manage. He didn't hear from Vivian for 3 days, which felt like an eternity. He was starting to think he'd ruined everything when she showed up at the auto shop on Thursday, not in her usual designer clothes but in jeans and a simple shirt. "Can we talk?" she asked. Rick, his boss, gave him a knowing look and told him to take his break. They walked to the small park across the street and sat on the swings, which felt absurdly teenage but somehow appropriate. "I'm sorry," they both said at the same time, then laughed awkwardly. "You first," Ethan said. Vivian took a breath. "I'm sorry I pushed. You're right. It's too soon and I was overstepping. It's just that I'm used to solving problems with money, and I forget that's not always the answer. But I also want you to know that I never, not once, thought you were with me for my money. If anything, I worry I'm not enough for you because I can't give you the one thing you really need." "What's that?" "Time. Your time is so limited between Maya and work and just surviving. And I have so much money but so little time myself. I work 60, 70 hours a week. How is this supposed to work long term? I keep thinking about that, and I can't figure it out, but I also can't imagine not seeing where this goes." Ethan reached over and took her hand, stilling the nervous way she was twisting her fingers. "I've been thinking about that too. And I don't have answers, but I know that when I'm with you, I'm happier than I've been in years. Maya talks about you constantly. You make us both laugh. That has to count for something." "It counts for everything," Vivian said quietly. "I'm falling for you, Ethan, both of you. And it terrifies me because I don't know how to do this. I've never had anything real before." "Well, I'm falling for you too," he admitted. "So I guess we figure it out together." She leaned over and kissed him, still sitting on the swings in a rundown park, and it felt more romantic than anything Ethan had ever experienced. The car situation resolved itself in an unexpected way. Rick pulled Ethan aside the next day and offered him a raise and promotion to shop manager. It came with better hours and enough extra money that, combined with what he'd saved, Ethan could afford a decent used car. When he excitedly called Vivian to tell her, she sounded genuinely thrilled. "See, you did it yourself. I'm so proud of you. Want to come celebrate?" "Nothing fancy, just pizza with me and Maya." "I'd love to." That night, sitting on the floor of his tiny apartment eating pizza off paper plates while Maya chattered about her day and Vivian laughed at all the right moments, Ethan felt something settle in his chest. This was happiness. Real, simple, uncomplicated happiness. As spring turned to summer, their relationship deepened. Vivian started keeping a change of casual clothes at the office so she could go straight to Ethan's place after work sometimes. They'd cook dinner together while Maya did homework, then all watch a movie curled up on the couch. On weekends, they'd explore the city, Vivian experiencing things like public pools and free museum days that she'd never bothered with before. Ethan and Maya seeing parts of the city that had always felt off limits to them. "This is amazing," Maya said one Saturday at the botanical gardens, staring at a massive glass house full of tropical plants. "It is," Vivian agreed. "I can't believe I've lived here my whole life and never came here. Daddy says we can't let money stop us from seeing beautiful things. We just have to find the free, beautiful things." Vivian met Ethan's eyes over Maya's head, and something passed between them that felt significant. That night, after they'd dropped Maya at a sleepover at Sophie's house, Vivian and Ethan had their first night truly alone together. They went back to her place, and there was a tentative, nervous energy between them that hadn't been there before. "We don't have to rush anything," Vivian said as they stood in her living room, the city lights twinkling below them. "I know." Ethan pulled her close, his hands settling on her waist. "But I want to, if you do." "I do." They made their way to her bedroom, and everything that followed felt natural and right. Afterwards, lying tangled in her sheets, Vivian traced patterns on his chest. "Tell me something nobody knows about you," she said. He thought about it. "When Maya was born and her mom left, I was terrified I'd mess her up. So I read every parenting book I could get from the library. I took notes. I still have the notebooks." "That's incredibly sweet. Your turn." "I'm dyslexic," she said. "Severely. I've just gotten really good at hiding it. But it's why I work so hard. I always feel like I have to be twice as good to be taken seriously." "You are twice as good. That has nothing to do with dyslexia." She kissed him for that, and they didn't talk much more that night. The first real fight came in July. Vivian had been invited to a major charity gala and wanted Ethan to come as her date. It wasn't until he agreed that he realized what that meant. Photographers, society pages, public scrutiny. When a gossipy society blogger somehow got wind of Turner Industries' CEO dating a mechanic and published a speculative piece, Ethan saw his worst fears come to life in the comments section. Gold digger. User, clearly after her money, she can do so much better. He showed up at her office the next day, the blog post pulled up on his phone. "We need to talk." Vivian took one look at his face and dismissed her assistant, closing the door behind them. "What's wrong?" He showed her the post. She read it, her face hardening. "This is garbage." "You know that, right?" "Do I? Look at what people are saying, Vivian. This is what everyone thinks." "I don't care what everyone thinks. I care what you think, what I think." "But it affects you, your company, your reputation. My reputation will be fine. And honestly, if the board tries to use this against me, that tells me exactly what kind of people they are." She stood, coming around the desk to face him. "Is this really about the blog post, or is this about you being scared?" That hit too close to home. "Maybe both. I can't give you what someone in your world could give you. I can't show up to galas in designer tuxedos or make conversation about stock portfolios. I'm always going to be the guy who smells like motor oil and has to check his bank account before buying groceries." "Ethan Armstrong, you listen to me." Her voice was fierce now. "I don't want someone from my world. My world is full of fake people having fake conversations about fake things. You're real. What we have is real. Your daughter is real. That's what I want. That's all I want. But no buts. Unless you're telling me you don't want this anymore, that you don't want me, then we deal with stupid bloggers and ignorant comments and move forward. Together." He pulled her into his arms, holding her tight. "I want you. God, I want you. I'm just scared of messing this up." "Then don't. Don't let fear or pride or other people's opinions mess it up. That's the only way we lose." They went to the gala together. Ethan rented a tuxedo that Vivian insisted on paying for, which he finally allowed, because she made a compelling argument about it being a work event for her. Maya stayed with Mrs. Chen, but not before seeing her father all dressed up and declaring him the most handsome dad in the world. The gala itself was overwhelming. Too many people, too many conversations where Ethan felt out of his depth. But Vivian never left his side, her hand firmly in his, introducing him to everyone with pride in her voice. When people asked what he did, he said he was a mechanic, and Vivian would add that he was the best mechanic in the city and managed an entire shop. The society photographer caught them dancing, Vivian laughing at something Ethan had whispered in her ear. When the photo appeared in the paper the next day, the caption read, "Turner Industries CEO Vivian Turner and her boyfriend Ethan Armstrong at the Summerlight Charity Gala." They looked happy. They looked in love. They looked right. August brought new challenges. Maya was starting second grade and needed supplies, new clothes, and a bunch of fees that Ethan had budgeted for but still hurt. When Vivian offered to help, he accepted this time, but only for Maya's sake. They agreed that Vivian would cover the school supplies as an early birthday present for Maya, whose birthday was in September. "I can do that, right?" Vivian asked, uncertain. "I'm not overstepping. You're practically family at this point," Ethan said, then froze, realizing what he'd implied. But Vivian just smiled, soft and genuine. "Yeah, I guess I am. For Maya's 8th birthday, they threw a party in the park. Sophie and a few other school friends came, along with Mrs. Chen and some of Ethan's co-workers. Vivian had wanted to rent out some elaborate venue, but Ethan had gently reminded her that Maya was 8 and would be just as happy, probably happier, with a park party and a homemade cake. He was right. Maya was ecstatic, running around with her friends, her laughter ringing out across the park. When it was time for cake, Vivian helped light the candles and they all sang while Maya made a wish. "What did you wish for?" Sophie asked. "Can't tell or it won't come true," Maya said solemnly. But she looked at Ethan and Vivian standing together, and Ethan had a pretty good idea what that wish had been. Later, after all the guests had left and they were cleaning up, Maya tugged on Vivian's sleeve. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course, sweetheart. Are you going to marry my dad?" Vivian's eyes went wide, and she shot a panicked look at Ethan. He wasn't sure whether to be mortified or amused and landed somewhere in between. "Maya, that's not really something you ask people," he said gently. "But I want to know, because if you're going to, then you'd be like my mom." "And I think I'd like that." Vivian knelt down to Maya's level, her voice gentle. "Your dad and I care about each other very much, and I care about you very much. But that's a big decision that grown-ups have to talk about and think about a lot. What I can tell you is that I'm not going anywhere. I want to be in your life, in both your lives, for a long time." "Okay," Maya said, satisfied with this answer in the way that children somehow are. "I'm glad. I love you, Vivian." It was the first time she'd said it, and Vivian's eyes filled with tears. "I love you too, Maya, so much." After Maya was in bed that night, Vivian and Ethan sat on the couch in his apartment, the question hanging in the air between them. "Sorry about that," Ethan finally said. "She's been asking me about marriage lately. I think Sophie's dad just got engaged." "Don't be sorry, it's a valid question." Vivian was quiet for a moment. "Is it something you've thought about?" "Yeah," he admitted. "Have you?" "Every day for the last month." He turned to face her fully. "Yeah, Ethan, I know it's fast. We've only been together since February, really. But I've never been more sure of anything in my life. You and Maya, you're my family, you're home. Everything else is just noise." "I feel the same way, but I don't have a ring and I can't afford the kind you deserve, and this is the worst proposal ever." Vivian laughed, tears streaming down her face. "Is this a proposal?" "I guess it is." He took her hands in his, suddenly serious. "Vivian Turner, I love you. I love your strength and your kindness and the way you don't take crap from anyone but can be so gentle with my daughter. I love that you eat pizza on the floor and don't mind getting grease under your nails at the shop. I love you and I want to spend my life with you. So yeah, will you marry me?" "Yes," she said, kissing him between words. "Yes, yes, yes." They told Maya the next morning over breakfast, and her shriek of joy probably woke the entire building. She immediately started planning the wedding, complete with detailed descriptions of her flower girl dress and how there should definitely be chocolate cake because vanilla was boring. But the engagement did bring complications. Vivian's board was not thrilled, particularly the older members who saw Ethan as a distraction at best and a threat at worst. There were emergency meetings and stern discussions about optics and shareholders. Vivian came home from one such meeting looking exhausted and defeated. "They want me to sign a prenup," she said, collapsing on Ethan's couch. "A really aggressive one that basically says if we divorce, you get nothing." "Okay," Ethan said simply. She looked up, startled. "Okay?" "Yeah." "I mean, I'm not marrying you for your money. I never wanted your money. So if signing some papers makes your board feel better and protects what you've built, I'll sign them." "You're not even a little bit offended." "Should I be? Vivian, you're a CEO. You have responsibilities and a company to think about. I get that. All I care about is you and Maya being a family. The rest is just details." She launched herself at him, kissing him hard. "How are you real?" They hired a lawyer, Vivian's actually, to review the prenup and make sure it was fair. The lawyer was a sharp woman named Patricia who looked at Ethan with initial skepticism that gradually turned to approval as they talked through the details. You're either the best actor I've ever met or genuinely don't care about her money, Patricia said. Definitely the second one. In the end, the prenup was fair. If they divorced, Ethan would get nothing from Turner Industries, but would receive appropriate support and shared custody of any children they had together. It also included provisions for Maya's education and welfare. Ethan signed without hesitation. The wedding was planned for October, giving them just over 2 months to organize everything. Vivian wanted something simple, which her publicist and board thought was insane. There was pressure for a big society wedding, but Vivian held firm. "It's my wedding," she told them in a meeting that Ethan heard about secondhand. "I'll be getting married in a park with my family and friends, and that's final. If you can't handle that, that's your problem, not mine." In the end, they compromised. The ceremony would be intimate, just close friends and family, but there would be a larger reception afterwards for business associates and society expectations. Ethan didn't love the idea, but he understood the political realities of Vivian's position. Maya was over the moon about being a flower girl. Vivian took her shopping for a dress, and they came back giggling like conspirators, Maya wearing a beautiful pale pink dress that she insisted on showing Ethan immediately. "Daddy, look, I'm like a princess." "You're always a princess," he said, but his throat was tight. His little girl was growing up, and soon she'd have a mother figure officially in her life. It was everything he'd wanted for her and everything he'd been afraid to hope for. The weeks leading up to the wedding were chaotic. Ethan's small apartment couldn't hold all the wedding stuff, so things migrated to Vivian's penthouse. They'd been talking about moving in together after the wedding anyway, but the reality of combining their lives was hitting home. What about Maya's school? Ethan asked one night as they looked at logistics. "Your place is in a different district. There's a great school 2 blocks away, but if Maya wants to stay at her current school, we'll make it work. We can drive her or even look at places in between. You'd move from here." He gestured at the penthouse with its $1 million view. "It's just a place, Ethan. You and Maya are home. We'll figure out the rest." They decided to stay in the penthouse for now, but enrolled Maya in the new school starting after the wedding. It was closer, well-rated, and Maya was excited about the adventure of a new school. They visited together, met the teacher, and Maya made friends with another girl in the class within 5 minutes. Some things never changed. Mrs. Chen cried when they told her about the wedding and the move. "I'm so happy for you," she said, hugging Ethan tight, "but I'll miss this little one." "You're invited to visit anytime," Vivian assured her, "and if you're ever willing, we'd love to have you watch Maya sometimes. I know it's farther. For this one, I'd travel anywhere, Mrs." Chen pinched Maya's cheek gently. The night before the wedding, Ethan lay in his apartment for the last time. Most of his stuff was already moved out, and the space felt hollow. Maya was having a sleepover at Vivian's with Sophie as company, so he was alone with his thoughts. His phone rang. "Vivian, hey, beautiful, aren't you supposed to be getting your beauty sleep?" "Can't sleep, nervous." "About tomorrow?" "No, yes, I don't know," she laughed shakily. "I'm not nervous about marrying you. I'm nervous about messing this up somehow, about not being the mother Maya needs. About the press or the company or any of a million things going wrong. Vivian, listen to me. Tomorrow, we're going to stand in front of the people we love and promise to be there for each other. That's it. That's all that matters. Everything else we'll figure out together." "Together," she repeated. "I like the sound of that. Me too. Now get some sleep. I'll see you at the altar." "I love you, Ethan Armstrong." "I love you too, soon to be Vivian Armstrong." She laughed at that. "Actually, I was thinking of going with Turner Armstrong, for work at least." "Is that okay? You could call yourself Queen of England for all I care, as long as you show up tomorrow. I'll be there. Try to stop me." The wedding day dawned clear and bright, one of those perfect October days that felt like a gift. The ceremony was in a beautiful park garden, surrounded by fall foliage in brilliant reds and golds. Ethan stood at the altar with Rick as his best man, watching as first Sophie, And then Maya came down the aisle, scattering flower petals with serious concentration. Then Vivian appeared, and Ethan forgot how to breathe. She wore a simple white dress, elegant and understated, her dark hair loose around her shoulders. No veil, no train, no fuss. Just Vivian, smiling at him like he was the only person in the world. She didn't have anyone to walk her down the aisle, her parents long gone and no siblings, so she walked alone with her head held high. When she reached him, Ethan took her hands and she whispered, "Hi. Hi yourself. You look amazing. You clean up pretty nice too." The officiant cleared his throat and they both laughed, settling in for the ceremony. The vows were traditional, but when it came time for personal statements, Ethan spoke from the heart. "Vivian, you came into my life like a storm, unexpected and powerful. You've changed everything in the best ways. You've shown me that family isn't just blood, it's choosing each other every day. You've given Maya something I never could alone, proof that love can grow even when you think you have nothing to offer. I promise to support your dreams, celebrate your victories, and be there for the hard days. I promise to be your partner in every sense of the word. And I promise to love you for exactly who you are every single day for the rest of our lives." Vivian was crying by the end, and her voice shook as she gave her own vows. "Ethan, you taught me what real kindness looks like. You reminded me that the most valuable things in life can't be bought or sold. Your strength isn't in how much you can lift or how hard you can work, though you do both. Your strength is in your heart, in how you love your daughter, in how you've opened your life to include me. Maya, sweetheart, I promise to always be here for you, to love you and support you and be the best stepmom I can be. Ethan, I promise to never take for granted the gift of being part of your family. I promise to be your partner, your friend, and your love for all the days I'm given. Thank you for giving me a home." There wasn't a dry eye in the gathering as they exchanged rings. Simple gold bands that Ethan had insisted on buying himself, working overtime for a month to afford them. When the officiant pronounced them married and Ethan kissed his wife for the first time, Maya cheered along with everyone else, jumping up and down with excitement. The reception was later that evening, a more formal affair at a hotel ballroom. Ethan felt out of place in his tuxedo among the business elite and society figures, but Vivian kept him close, introducing him to everyone with pride. When it came time for their first dance, she led him onto the floor, and they swayed together as a singer crooned something soft and romantic. "Thank you," Vivian whispered against his shoulder. "For what?" "For seeing me, the real me, not the CEO, not the money, just me. Always," he promised. "Just you is all I ever wanted." They danced with Maya between them for the father-daughter dance, both of them holding her hands as she giggled and spun. Watching Vivian interact with his daughter, his wife with his daughter, Ethan felt a completeness he'd never experienced before. The honeymoon had to be brief because of Maya and work commitments, just a long weekend at a cabin upstate. But those 3 days alone together, hiking and cooking and making love by the fireplace, were perfect. They talked about the future, about maybe having more kids, about how to balance Vivian's demanding career with family life. "I've been thinking about scaling back at work," Vivian admitted one morning over coffee. "Maybe promoting someone to COO, taking on less day-to-day operations." "Only if that's what you want," Ethan said firmly. "Not because you think you should. I knew who you were when I married you. I don't expect you to change. But I want to. I want more time with you and Maya. I want to be present for the important things. The company will be fine. My family is what matters." When they returned home, the reality of married life set in. It was an adjustment, merging their two very different worlds. The penthouse slowly filled with signs of their blended life. Maya's artwork on the fridge, Ethan's tools in the storage room, casual furniture mixed with Vivian's elegant pieces. They developed routines. Family dinners every night, lazy Sunday mornings, date nights when Mrs. Chen could watch Maya. The board at Turner Industries continued to be difficult, particularly when Vivian made good on her plan to promote a COO and reduce her hours. There were accusations that she was abandoning her responsibilities, letting her personal life interfere with business. But Vivian held firm, and when the quarterly reports came back stronger than ever, the criticism quieted. "Turns out I'm more effective when I'm actually happy," she told Ethan dryly. Maya thrived in her new school, making friends easily and loving the expanded programs. She'd come home full of stories about art class and science experiments, and Vivian and Ethan would listen to every word over dinner. On weekends, they explored the city as a family, finding new parks and museums and ice cream shops. Vivian had been right. The free, beautiful things were everywhere once you started looking. The first real test of their marriage came at Christmas. Vivian wanted to spoil Maya, which was natural enough, but her idea of appropriate Christmas gifts and Ethan's were worlds apart. "We're not getting her a pony," Ethan said flatly, looking at Vivian's list. "It wouldn't be a full-sized horse, more like a small pony, and there are stables right outside the city." "Vivian, she's 8. She doesn't need a pony." They compromised as they'd learned to do. Maya got plenty of gifts, including riding lessons at those stables, but nothing so extravagant that she'd lose perspective on the value of things. On Christmas morning, watching Maya's face light up at each present, Ethan felt grateful for a wife who listened, who tried to understand his perspective even when it went against her instincts. The best gift, though, came later that day. They were all curled up on the couch, full of Christmas dinner, when Maya said sleepily, "This is the best Christmas ever. I'm glad we're a real family now." "We were always a real family, Princess," Ethan said. "Yeah, but now it's official. Now Vivian's really my mom." Vivian's eyes filled with tears. "Is that okay, me being your mom?" "Duh," Maya said with 8-year-old bluntness. "You're the best mom ever, even though I never had a different one to compare to." They laughed at that, and Ethan pulled both his girls close, his heart so full it felt like it might burst. As winter turned to spring, they settled into their life together with increasing ease. The board finally accepted Vivian's new work-life balance when Turner Industries had its most profitable quarter in years. Ethan continued managing the auto shop, and Rick had started talking about retirement and possibly selling Ethan the business in a few years. It was a dream Ethan had never let himself have, but now it seemed possible. In March, on the anniversary of the day they'd met, Vivian suggested going back to that bus stop. "Is that weird?" she asked. "I just want to see it, remember where this all started." It wasn't weird. They bundled Maya up and took the bus, which Maya thought was a grand adventure, to that ordinary street corner. The bus stop looked exactly the same, unremarkable in every way. "This is it?" Maya asked. "This is where you met?" "This is it," Ethan confirmed. "I gave your mom my jacket right here." "That's so romantic," Maya sighed. "Like a fairy tale." "Better than a fairy tale," Vivian said, taking Ethan's hand. "Because it's real." That night, after Maya was asleep, they made love with a tenderness that spoke of deep familiarity and even deeper affection. Afterwards, lying in their bed with the city lights glowing beyond the windows, Vivian said, "I'm pregnant." Ethan sat up so fast he nearly fell out of bed. "What? I'm pregnant. About 6 weeks, I think. I took a test this morning." She was watching him nervously. "We talked about having kids, but if it's too soon or if you're not ready." He kissed her, cutting off her worried words. "Are you kidding? This is amazing. We're having a baby." "We're having a baby," she repeated, and then they were both laughing and crying and holding each other tight. They told Maya a few weeks later, waiting until after the first ultrasound to be sure everything was progressing well. Maya's reaction was everything they could have hoped for. "I'm going to be a big sister." "Really? Can it be a girl? I want a sister. But a brother would be okay too, I guess." "When do they get here? Can I help name them? Can they share my room?" The questions came rapid fire, and Ethan and Vivian answered them as best they could, laughing at Maya's enthusiasm. That night, Meyer insisted on kissing Vivian's still flat stomach goodnight and telling the baby about their family. "You're going to love it here," she said seriously. "We have the best dad, and Vivian is the best mom, and I'm going to be the best big sister ever. I'll teach you everything important, like how to ride a bike and how to make Dad laugh when he's tired." Okay. Good talk, baby." Pregnancy agreed with Vivian. She glowed with happiness, and even the morning's sickness didn't dampen her spirits. She continued working, but kept her reduced hours, wanting to be present for Maya and to take care of herself. The board, seeing her continued success and happiness, had finally backed off their criticism. Ethan worried, of course. He worried about doctor bills, even though they had good insurance now. He worried about having enough space, even though the penthouse had plenty of room. He worried about being a good father to a newborn again after so many years. Vivian would listen to his worries and then calmly address each one, her practical nature grounding his anxiety. "We're going to be fine," she'd say. "Better than fine, we're going to be great." The baby came in November, a full year and a month after their wedding. Labor was long and difficult, and Ethan held Vivian's hand through every contraction, murmuring encouragement and love. When their son finally arrived, healthy and squalling, Ethan cried openly. "He's perfect," Vivian said, exhausted but radiant, holding the tiny bundle. "He looks like you," Ethan said, touching one tiny hand. They named him Lucas, and Maya was instantly obsessed with her baby brother. She wanted to help with everything, from diaper changes to bottle feedings. Watching her carefully hold Lucas, singing him soft songs she made up, Ethan was struck by how much his life had changed in less than 2 years. The first few months were exhausting, as they always are with a newborn. But they worked as a team, trading off night feedings and diaper duty. Vivian took maternity leave, and Ethan adjusted his schedule at the shop to be home more. Maya helped however she could, proud of her role as big sister. One night, when Lucas was about 3 months old, Ethan woke to find Vivian's side of the bed empty. He found her in the nursery, holding their son, tears streaming down her face. "Hey," he said softly. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong. Everything's right. I was just feeding him, and he was looking at me with those big eyes, and I thought about how different my life is now. 2 years ago, I was standing at a bus stop in the rain, so miserable I could barely function. And now I have this. You and Maya and Lucas, a family, love, everything I never knew I was missing." Ethan wrapped his arms around both of them. "I know the feeling. You saved me too, you know. I was so focused on just surviving, just making it through each day. You showed me how to actually live." They stood there in the dark nursery, the 3 of them, just breathing and being together. As Lucas grew, their family found its rhythm. Maya was in 4th grade now, thriving academically and socially. She played soccer and took those riding lessons and had a busy social life that kept them all running. Lucas was a happy baby who grew into a curious toddler, getting into everything and keeping them on their toes. Rick retired and sold Ethan the auto shop, with Vivian's help for the down payment. It was the only financial help Ethan had accepted, and only because it was an investment in their future, a legacy he could build and eventually pass on to his children if they wanted it. The shop flourished under his full ownership, and he hired more staff, including a young single mom who reminded him of himself when Maya was little. Vivian continued to run Turner Industries, but on her terms. She worked from home 2 days a week, never missed important family events, and had cultivated a leadership team she trusted. The company continued to grow and profit, but she measured success differently now. "It's not about the stock price," she told a business magazine that interviewed her. "It's about building something sustainable that allows me to be present for my family. That's real success." The article spawned a whole conversation about work-life balance and female CEOs. And Vivian became something of a spokesperson for the idea that you could have both career success and family happiness. She was invited to speak at conferences and write opinion pieces. and she used the platform to advocate for family leave policies and flexible work arrangements. On their third wedding anniversary, they went back to that bus stop again, this time with both kids. Lucas, at 2 years old, didn't understand the significance, but Maya did. "This is where our family started," she said, now almost 11 and increasingly thoughtful. "Actually," Ethan said, "our family started when you were born, Princess. This is just where it grew." "Can I tell you guys something?" Maya asked. They nodded, and she continued, "At school, some kids talk about how their parents fight or their parents are divorced or their parents are never home. And I feel bad for them, but I also feel really lucky. Because you guys love each other and you're always there for us, and I know that's special. So thank you for being good parents and for finding each other." Vivian and Ethan were both crying now, and they pulled Meyer into a hug while Lucas toddled around their legs, demanding attention. Right there on that ordinary street corner where everything had changed, they stood as a family, complete and happy and whole. Years continued to pass, marked by school plays and soccer games, by late-night feedings and early morning chaos, by laughter and occasional tears, but always, always love. Maya grew into a teenager, then a young woman, bright and kind and strong like her parents. Lucas developed his father's mechanical aptitude and his mother's business sense, a combination that served him well. The auto shop expanded into multiple locations. Turner Industries continued to thrive. But more importantly, the Armstrong family remained close and connected. They still had family dinners every night when possible, still took weekend adventures to find free, beautiful things, still valued presence over presents. When Maya graduated from high school, her speech as valedictorian made both her parents cry. "I learned everything important from my parents," she said to the assembled crowd. "My dad taught me that hard work and integrity matter more than money. My mom taught me that success means nothing if you're not happy. Together, they taught me that family is what you make it, that love can grow in unexpected places, and that the kindest thing you can do is give someone the coat off your back, even if it's all you have. These lessons shaped who I am, and I carry them forward with pride." In the audience, Ethan took Vivian's hand, their fingers intertwining as naturally as breathing. Vivian leaned her head on his shoulder, and Lucas, now a gangly teenager, sat on her other side, unusually still and serious. "We did good," Vivian whispered. "We did great," Ethan corrected. That night, back at the penthouse that had long since become home for all of them, they celebrated with Maya's favorite foods and too much cake. Friends came and went, but eventually it was just the four of them, sitting on the balcony watching the city lights. "You know what I realized today?" Maya said, looking at her parents. "That day at the bus stop when Dad gave you his jacket that wasn't just kind, it was brave. It's scary to give something when you don't have much to give, but he did it anyway, and look what happened. You can change someone's whole life with one small act of courage. You can change your own life too," Vivian added. "I was so lost that day, and accepting help, accepting kindness from a stranger that took courage too. Sometimes the bravest thing is letting someone in." Ethan looked at his family, his wife, his children, and thought about that rainy February evening years ago. He'd been cold and tired and worried about making rent, and he'd given away his jacket to a shivering stranger. It had seemed like nothing at the time, just basic human decency. But Vivian was right. It had taken courage, the courage to see someone else's need as more important than his own comfort. And that one small act had led to this. A family, a home, a love story that continued to unfold with each passing day. Not a fairy tale because it was messy and real and sometimes hard, but better than any fairy tale because it was theirs. Lucas eventually went inside to play video games, and Maya followed to call her friends. Alone on the balcony, Vivian and Ethan sat in comfortable silence, watching the city they both called home. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you hadn't offered me that jacket?" Vivian asked. "Sometimes. But then I remember that I would have offered it regardless. It's who I am. And you would have been kind and beautiful and everything I needed regardless. Maybe we would have met some other way. Maybe, but I like our way. I like that our story started with kindness. It continued with kindness too, Ethan pointed out. Every day with you is kind. Every day with our family is kind. We built this life on kindness and love, and look how strong it is. They sat there until late, talking about everything and nothing, making plans for the future and reminiscing about the past. When they finally went inside, they checked on both kids. Meyer on her phone, Lucas asleep with a book on his chest before retreating to their own room. "I love our life," Vivian said as they got ready for bed, a statement she made often because it never stopped being true. "I love you," Ethan replied, which was the foundation of everything else. They'd weathered storms over the years, of course. There had been difficult times at the company, health scares with the kids, the normal stresses of balancing work and family and individual needs. But they'd faced it all together, with honesty and communication and unwavering support for each other. Friends often asked them the secret to their happy marriage, and they always gave the same answer. There was no secret, just commitment, respect, and the choice to keep choosing each other every single day. Some days were easy, some were hard, but all of them were worth it. Years later, when Lucas was graduating high school and Maya was in college, when their hair had threads of gray and their faces bore lines of laughter and experience, Ethan and Vivian took another trip to that bus stop. It had become a tradition, marking significant moments by returning to where it all began. The neighborhood had changed some. New businesses, different people. But the bus stop remained, a constant in a changing world. 20 years, Vivian said, reading the inscription they'd had placed there, a small plaque on the bench that simply read, "Small acts of kindness can change everything." "Best 20 years of my life," Ethan said, pulling her close. They sat on the bench, watching buses come and go, people hurrying past with their own stories and struggles and small moments of kindness. Somewhere in the city, their children were living their own lives, carrying forward the lessons they'd been taught. The auto shop was thriving, managed by a team Ethan trusted. Turner Industries was preparing for Vivian's eventual retirement, though she showed no signs of slowing down yet. But in that moment, none of that mattered. What mattered was the two of them, sitting on a bench at a bus stop, hands linked, hearts full, grateful beyond measure for a rainy February evening and a worn denim jacket and the courage to care for a stranger. "Thank you," Vivian said, as she had said so many times over the years. "For what?" Ethan asked, as he always did. "For seeing someone who needed help and helping, for changing my life, for loving me and our family so completely, for being exactly who you are." "Thank you for letting me," he replied. "For taking a chance on a struggling dad with nothing to offer but a jacket and a kind heart. For building this beautiful life with me, for being my partner in every way that matters." They kissed there on that bench, a kiss that held 20 years of love and commitment and joy. When they finally pulled apart, both smiling, Vivian rested her head on Ethan's shoulder. "Ready to go home?" she asked. "Always," he said, "as long as home is wherever you are." They walked to the bus stop across the street, waited for their bus, and rode home together, just as they'd been doing for 20 years. Just as they'd continue to do for all the years to come. Because that's what love was. Showing up, every day in small ways and large, with kindness and courage and unwavering commitment. It had started with a jacket at a bus stop. It had grown into a lifetime of love. And it would continue, through their children and grandchildren someday, through the ripples of kindness they'd sent out into the world, through the example they'd set of what real love looked like, not perfect. Not easy, but real and deep and true. The kind of love that changed lives, one small act of kindness at a time. The kind of love that was worth every struggle, every challenge, every moment of doubt. The kind of love that proved, again and again, That the best things in life couldn't be bought or sold or earned through anything but an open heart and a willingness to care. As the bus carried them home through the city streets, past the life they'd built together, Ethan and Vivian sat side by side, content in the knowledge that they'd found something rare and precious. They'd found each other, and in doing so, they'd found themselves. They'd found home. They'd found love. And that, they both knew, was the greatest gift of all. Their story had begun with a struggling dad and a shivering woman at a bus stop. It had grown into a tale of two people who'd built a beautiful life together, raised wonderful children, created thriving careers, and never forgot the simple kindness that had started it all. It was a story of courage and compassion, of perseverance and partnership, of love in its truest, most enduring form, and it was far from over. There were more adventures ahead, more challenges to face, more joys to share. Grandchildren to spoil someday, new businesses to build, new ways to give back to their community. But through it all, they'd face it together, hand in hand, heart to heart, just as they always had. Because that was their promise, made on a fall day in a park surrounded by loved ones, renewed every single day since. To be there for each other, in good times and bad, in sickness and health, for richer or poorer. To be partners, friends, lovers, family. To choose each other, over and over, for all the days of their lives. It was a promise they'd kept. A promise they'd continue to keep. And a promise that had transformed two lives into one beautiful, shared journey. From a bus stop to forever, from a jacket to a lifetime of love, from strangers to soulmates. That was their story, that was their legacy. And it all began with one struggling dad who gave his coat to a shivering woman and the CEO who fell for him, finding in his kindness everything she'd been missing and everything she'd ever need.